In the meantime, governors in southern Nigeria have demanded that Nigeria's presidency should come to the south in 2023. The governors rose from a meeting in Lagos on Monday where they reviewed the state of the nation, especially the security situation, anti-open grazing law in all member states. They also reiterated their demand for state police. Arise News' Tokunbo Oyetunji has the details.
The Southern Governors Forum, at the end of its meeting held today, reviewed the situation in the country and focused on the current security situation, constitutional amendments, and petroleum industry bill. The forum reviewed the security situation in the country and commended the security operatives for their relentless efforts in restoring security and safety. We commiserate with families and loved ones who have fallen in the line of duty. The forum re-emphasized the need for state police. The forum set a timeline of Wednesday, the 1st of September 2021 for the promulgation of the anti-grazing law in all its member states.
Chairman of the Southern Governors Forum, Rotimi Akeredolu there. Now, the resolve of the governors to counter federal government's position on grazing routes is just one out of a number of counter positions from that meeting. Already, there have been diverse reactions to decisions and recommendations raised by the Southern governors. And for his perspective, we're now being joined by Jimi Agbaje, a politician and chieftain of the People's Democratic Party. Welcome to Newsday. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, in no particular order, let's begin with the open grazing ban. This is coming almost 2 months after the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice opposed the decision when the governors rose from their Delta meeting. He described it then as unconstitutional. Let me ask you, do you foresee further resistance to this move by the Southern governors? And is it impossible to see this as a South versus North solution to the problem? I ask that because, as with every other thing in Nigeria, there's a tendency for it to be politicized or ethnicized.
Well, thank you. I think we must look at the communique of the Southern governors from the background of what their recommendations came on. They talked about, they emphasized or re-emphasized their commitment to a one united Nigeria based on equity, based on fairness, based on justice, based on progress, and based on coexistence of all. Now, so when they talk about the anti-grazing law, it's that at the back of their minds and at the back of any well-meaning Nigerian's mind. And basically what I see is that it's not a North and South thing. We're aware that there are many northern states that also have said, in fact, that have passed anti-grazing laws. I believe that the first anti-grazing law actually came from the northern part of the country. So it's not a South and North thing. I think it's just a situation where some people just don't want to make progress the way it should, based on equity, fairness, justice, peaceful coexistence. I'm not sure about the Constitution. I will leave that to the lawyers to handle. But I do know that there is a land use law which vests the powers of land on the states. And so if you're talking about Constitution, I don't know where that stands. We're talking of grazing routes that I think were there in the First Republic before the land use law. And so these are things that the courts will decide. But I'm not sure that we're going to make progress if we allow the kind of clashes that we're having between herdsmen, between farmers, and of course all the other insecurity issues. Okay. So it's more than the South that is supporting the anti-grazing law. Even the owners of the leadership of the herdsmen, the Mieti Allah, have said that they support ranching. So to that extent, I just think it's a few powerful people in government that are flexing muscles.
Okay, help us with this, because there's a tendency to feel after the last meeting they had that somehow we had something solid we could work on. But how substantial are the pronouncements of the governors, even with regards to the anti-grazing rule? Because we know after the last time, the president came and practically dismissed it. So are they operating within their confines? Are they overriding the principle of separation of powers? Are some of the pronouncements they're making not better served by being directed to the legislature rather than as an association of governors?
No, in fact, I think what they're doing is they're following the Constitution, that as far as land is concerned in every state, it's vested in the states, in the federal system that we operate. So they're the ones actually that are working within the Constitution rather than going against the Constitution. The president in his interview did say that he was not going to go to speak opposed to what his Attorney General had pronounced. But for me, like I said, I think the governors in this case are not just following the Constitution, but they are representing what I call the overall majority. They're representing the thoughts and the feelings and commitments of the overall majority of their constituents. And so you do look at it from both the political stand and from the constitutional part of it. And I think if truth be told, they're on safe grounds.
Well, let's talk about their demands to produce the next president. We do know that no single region in Nigeria on its own can produce the president. Do you think that the southern governors have drawn the battle line when it comes to the 2023 presidential elections?
Again, I go back to the pillars that they put their communique on: equity, justice, fairness, progress, and peaceful coexistence. And I think we've come to realize that the issue of rotation, even though it's not in our constitution, helps, not just at the federal level, but even at the state level, even at the local government levels. We practice this. And basically, I think what the governors are saying is that, look, if we've had somebody from one part of the country, then it's also time, in the spirit of coexistence, in the spirit of inclusivity, to bring it to the southern part of the country. So it's not so much about drawing a battle line. I think it's about saying, look, if we're talking about equity, then we must be sincere. If we must be sincere, then it's time for the presidency to rotate to the other part of the country.
But how significant is this demand, considering that the southern governors make up a cross-section of political parties? We're talking about the ruling APC, your party, the major opposition PDP, and even ABGA from Anambra State, still in the south. How significant will this demand be?
I think that's the significance, you see, that this is not a partisan thing. This is a multi-partisan thing. This is about equity, like I said. It has nothing to do with one party or the other. It's saying that all of us believe that in the spirit of equity, in the spirit of making everybody feel a part of this country, we will still continue to run this rotation thing for a while, because there's no part of this country that you cannot find the right material to occupy position, and that's the reality. So for me, it's a very strong statement. It's a welcome statement that irrespective of party affiliation, you have the representatives doing that, taking a position that they all have applied themselves to. But we must also continue to emphasize that this is about the Southern Governors Forum. It does not mean that there are not people in the North that do not buy into this vision. I mean, we've had situations in recent times where a lot of powerful people from even the northern part have said that the next president must come from the South. So this is just their position. And I'm sure that you're going to get positions maybe from the North as a group, maybe from the regional governments in the North Central, and others, that will probably take a similar position. And don't forget that it's a question of majority. I mean, if you have, out of 6 regions, for example, the South has 3 regions. Out of 6 regions, you have 4 or 5 that are saying should come to the South. then that would be the wish of the majority.
Okay. Still looking at the overview and the credibility of the governor's stance as a bloc, some have said that maybe the governors are taking a populist stance. Meanwhile, they're neglecting areas of their own accountability. For example, these same governors didn't grant the judiciary autonomy. Who is holding them accountable to that? And someone even brought up the issue of Bakassi and accountability to that. So, and that maybe there are more pressing issues that are bipartisan that it could have brought up regarding education, health, and even, generally poverty, things that wouldn't speak to who holds power. What do you say to that?
Well, again, I would agree with them, but it's a question of many problems. From my part of the world, they say that when trees fall on top of each other, you take the one that is on top first. And I think what we have at the moment are the issues of insecurity, the issue of who's going to take over from the present administration or from what part of the country. These are bigger issues. And by the time we're able to solve this at the center, it probably gets easier to solve it as we go down to the subunits, to the federating units. I completely agree that what we're asking, what the people are asking for from the center, they are also expected to demand from the states. The states also are expected to devolve powers to the local governments, which they presently do not. It's interesting, even if you look at the communique, where the governors have spoken very authoritatively that the houses of assembly are going to pass this motion by the issue of the anti-grazing bill by the 1st of September. That tells you the enormity of the powers that they hold presently over the state's houses of assembly. But again, we will get there. It's a step-by-step thing. Let's get this big tree off first, and then we go down the line. That's the way I look at it. But I completely agree that we've got a lot of work to do in terms of all the other issues you've raised, education, health, poverty, that the governors themselves have a big role to play. I mean, even in the insecurity, if a lot of issues of education and health and poverty are addressed, we'll probably have less of the insecurity situations we have. But then it's a one-step-at-a-time thing.
Well, let's talk about another issue. I mean, one which ensures that we continue to have this democratic dispensation or process that we have. We're talking about the electoral process. Mr. Jimi Agbaje, you are not a stranger to the far from perfect electoral process in Nigeria after contesting several governorship elections in Lagos State. What are your thoughts on the controversies around the non-electronic transmission of results and as well as jacking up the limitation of campaign funds? Although the National Assembly has denied the electronic section, the section 50, subsection 2, controversial section of electronic passage of results.
Well, on the electronic transmission, I mean, when I read it over the weekend, I honestly didn't want to believe that we're going to go back, and so for me, my position is very clear. And like you said, as somebody who has played quite an active role in this thing, you win and lose elections at the collation center. And the way it works is that even when you have won at the polling unit, where your results have been announced, by the time it gets to the collation center, zeros have been added on to, in most cases, to the ruling party in either the state or the center. And the reality also is that at the collation center, the opposition has very little access to the collation center. So whatever is done there is final, and it goes on. And they say you go to tribunal, you go to court. But the truth is that the results are there, and that's what you work on. So for me, electronic transmission is a must if we want to say we're making progress. It's not going to solve all our problems, but at least it's going to give, shall I say, the weaker party or the weaker candidate a fighting chance. And that's the reality. So I don't think any well-meaning Nigerian who believes in democracy should allow that clause to be removed. So I want to believe that it remains a rumor, and if it is not, that it will be put back rather than expunged. Now, the issue of finance, again, I'm not going to come here and say it's good or it's bad, because it's a more complicated issue, and I'll explain it like this. If what we hear is true, that you need 15 billion to run for president. I have two issues. One, how do you even follow how much is spent on elections? That's number one. Number two, I wonder whether Nigerians have an idea what presidential candidates actually spend on elections. 15 billion is a very, very minute fraction of what they spend. It is unacceptable, yes. But then, why I say it's not something you just answer in a yes or no, or a good or bad manner, is that we have to ask ourselves, as the followership that is protesting these figures, as to what role we play or we want to play with regards to our democratic process. Because in the way we run our politics today, the parties do not pay dues, the membership do not pay dues, they do not pay for anything. So it is the candidate that supports the structure of the party. It is the candidate that does nearly, handles every expense of the party, of the campaign, and that is why it gets very expensive. So until we ourselves, as the followership, as the voters, decide that we're not going to have that. So it's not enough to say it's not going to be 15 billion. Are you ready to go and vote without being paid? Are you ready to insist that members of the political party must pay dues to run the party rather than ask the candidates to do that? On election day, when you have to pay agents, must you pay agents to follow, to watch your ballots? In Nigeria today, you have to. So that is what is the cost. But that cost is two ways. So for me, like I said, it's two issues. One, we all have a role to play in ensuring that that number comes down. And secondly, how do you monitor how much, even if it is 1 billion or it is 15 billion? That's my contribution on this matter.
Okay, listening to you, Mr. Agbaje, it's clear that the situation is much more complex than maybe it looks on the surface. I know you said we should treat the big tree first and then deal with the other bits later, but are we not in danger of underestimating what we're up against when you think that a group of southern governors can make a proclamation and somehow we're hopeful? I want to just tackle one issue specifically. They say no major security or policing operation should happen within their states without their knowledge. Do you see any problem with that? I'll bring up one. Perhaps it may go against covert operations. Can you help me understand how that will help the situation within the states and for the polity at large?
Yeah, I believe what they're addressing, definitely the state, and when I say the state now, I'm talking about the center, will have operations, like you said, covertly, that may not even be to the attention of the governor. But don't forget that the Constitution says that states that puts the governors as the chief security officers. And I believe where they're going is that there are some issues that are being handled in Nigeria today that do not take into consideration the sensitivities, the peculiarities of the particular areas where they're being handled. You can decide, especially when it comes to political matters, if the state believes that there is a troublesome situation with some troublesome persons or person, you do not use the same formula, so to say, to come into that state and do what you do without understanding the peculiarities and the sensitivities, because you end up creating more problem in that state. You end up creating more problem for the country. So if you have a governor or you have a state where you do have an issue with one or two persons or groups, I think it's important to get the governor to say, we want to do this. And he is probably in a better position, or she is in a better position to tell you how to do it, rather than come in and go in a kamikaze kind of style and rub on the sensitivities of the people in that area. I believe that's where the governors are going, that you create more problems for us in the way you are carrying out this situation. And I think they raised it about, when they talked about judgment, about the way they handled the security issues. It was very much elaborated in their communique that you need to carry us along in many of the cases so that we do not have problems at the end of the day when you have left. And I think you can see that there are such situations that linger on and you tend to push more people the wrong direction rather than sympathize with the process that you are pursuing.
When you speak of a kamikaze style, might you be alluding to the alleged NSAS massacre?
No, well, I'm not sure. No, not on the NSAS. And the NSAS issue was a different matter, because I believe that, if I'm correct, at least as far as Lagos is concerned, the governor was in the picture from what we gather. So that's different. But I'm not sure, for example, that if you look at the situations that happened with the Sunday Igboho idea of coming and, raiding his house, shooting everywhere. If you wanted to pick up Sunday Igboho, I believe that there are other ways that he could have been picked up without that kind of show of excessive force. And you had the same in the Southeast, where people are saying, rightly or wrongly, that a lot of it is militarized, it's fully militarized. I mean, I have friends who say, look, Jimmy, our place is just like a military zone. Now, it's okay to carry out what you want to do, but in trying to do that, you are also rubbing some people the wrong way, that, okay, it's all right. Yes, we do have people that we don't support their cause, but we're not the only ones that have a problem. There are such problems also in other parts of the country, and they're not treating them like us. And so what I mean is that, so in coming in trying to solve a problem, you are creating a bigger problem, a larger issue that you now leave behind to the governor to handle. And I think that's what the governors are saying.
Okay, a couple of questions, Mr. Agbaje. Just to take you back to the electoral funds in the country, spendings in the country, the bill we know is to go through a third reading. If you were to peg an amount, I know you said that was your take, but if you were, as someone who has worn the shoe several times and know where it pinches the most, if we had to peg an amount for electoral spending for politicians in Nigeria, for governors and the president, how much should it be? I also know that you are an avid user of Twitter. At some point, especially during the campaigns, during the last elections you were involved in. With the current ban on Twitter, are you still tweeting? What's your thoughts on the continuous ban of Twitter? And finally, we're counting down to the 2023 elections again in Nigeria. Would you be throwing your hat in the ring?
Oh my gosh. Now, where do I start from? Your first question had to do with...
electoral spending.
Okay, let's talk about the Twitter.
Okay,
electoral spending.
Yes.
I think I've said what I want to say. I'm only saying that putting a figure would be dependent on other issues. That's why I said that, for example, let's take a state that has 20,000 polling units. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, 20,000 polling units. For a candidate, you probably need about at least 2-3 persons in each polling unit. Now, let's even say you have 2 persons in each polling unit. It means you need 40,000 people. Now, those 40,000 people you are putting in those polling units, are they going to accept that it is a voluntary exercise, that they believe in the candidate, and therefore they will represent them at the polling unit? But if they do not, then the average fee is about 5,000 naira. Now, so when you're paying 5,000 naira in 40,000 places, you work out the maths and you begin to have an idea. Now, that is just on election day. That does not include the fact that on that same election day, your agent says, I cannot leave my polling unit, therefore, you have to give me food. And so that's not part of the 5,000 naira. So you're going to make provision for food. 1,000 naira, 2,000 naira per person. That adds up. And so you begin to see that that figure is going to be dependent on how we want to practice our democracy. I don't know if I help you in that
Okay,
manner,
very quickly on
so
Twitter, and you're running in 2023.
Yes. Well, I think Twitter is very clear. I mean, I'm not in support of the ban. Definitely, I've made that very, very clear. That no, you're impinging on my freedom of expression, and I don't think government is on the right side doing that. The last one, running for governor of in the present situation, I think, like I said, there are bigger trees to take off before we take the smaller ones. The issue of running for any kind of office, for me, is not on the table at this point in time. We first have to get Nigeria right, and then we have to get our democracy right.
And that's a
then
good place
we can
to
say,
leave it.
yes, we're good to go.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Jimi
much.
Agbaje.